Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Great Day Houston. Okay, so go to any craft store and you know Americans love to celebrate holidays. Last year, we spent $22 billion on Easter. That's a lot of baskets, brunches, bunnies, bonnets, and eggs. It's easy to get caught up in the secular celebration, but my first guest doesn't want the reason to get lost in the rabbit hole. Commemorating the resurrection offers opportunity to give people hope, purpose, and teach forgiveness. Pastor Gregg Matte is the senior pastor of Houston's First Baptist Church. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
All right. I want to back up on your story here because, you know, people have all different ways that they basically have come to Christ.
Yeah.
And Christianity is still one of the, leading religions of the world and the dominant one in America. All right. Did you grow up in a faith-based household?
You know, we were great people, but we never went to church, and Sunday morning was a little bit more the newspaper and breakfast and kind of hanging out, but we never really went. And so I didn't hear a lot about faith. Wasn't that it wasn't existent, but it wasn't really a core element.
Practice it.
Yeah, we didn't practice it. It wasn't a major part in our family. So I ended up just kind of wandering a little bit and trying to figure out what was the right deal and right way.
Yeah, in my household was like I think a lot of households is that you were told to get up, get dressed on a Sunday morning. You didn't know what for. You ended up at church and you suffered through a service, but they didn't give you the purpose or the relevance. It didn't have a perspective, right?
You just knew you needed to dress up and get there. And I remember one time my mom, she said, I came down in jeans and she said, go back up. We're going to church, put on slacks. I said, God doesn't care what I wear.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I do.
Yeah.
Go back and put on slacks.
Yeah, and I'm your mama.
That's right.
Yeah,
so
but
I did that.
Yeah, but it lacked context. And a lot of people, we'll show up to church lacking context, right? It's a social thing to do.
Yeah, it's just the thing to do on Sunday morning, but you got to really engage your heart is where the difference is made.
You had those kind of wandering years, which it happens at different times in life, especially when you become a teenager, and for you or a young adult, and you were doing the same things that other kids were doing.
Yeah, a little bit crazy. I grew up in kind of Sharpstown, A-Leaf area of our city, native Houstonian, and I just got in with the wrong crowd really and started partying and drinking and doing all sorts of wild stuff, and I just wanted people to like me basically.
Yeah.
And that's typical for teenagers, and I just realized there was a hole in my heart. There was something missing. And then I was working at Randall's.
Oh, this is where we have an intervention, everybody.
Yes, here it comes.
God's intervention.
That's right. The intersection is coming. So I'm working at Randall's sacking groceries, and one of the checkers, I thought she was cute, so I stayed on her aisle. Well, it turns out that she had been praying for me and began to share her faith with me, and that's how I
How old are you at this time?
I'm about 16 years old at this time.
Okay.
So just a young guy and just trying to make, the right decisions for making the wrong decisions. And so she was the one that led me to her youth minister's house, and we sat down and talked about things of faith, and that's when I trusted Christ as my Savior.
You had to make that phone call to her because you couldn't text back then.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. It was I don't think I had a cell phone even. I mean, it was landline. It was cordless phone with the antenna.
You had to go in the pantry and tell your parents, "I'll be out of the pantry in a second.
Yeah,
I'm gonna call a girl."
That's
All right. You say it changed your life. In what way? Do you remember the words that were said, or what filled that hole you said you had?
Yeah. It really did. I just felt guilty of the things that I'd done wrong. I felt a little aimless on what was my future going to be and where was I going. And that's the real change that happened. Is I experienced the forgiveness that God had to offer through Christ, and then in that also the purpose that God could use me to do something. And then now I'm a pastor, which I can't believe it.
Yeah, your steps were ordered.
Yeah, they were ordered.
God guides your course for a stable path, and it was steps of a good man ordered by the Lord. You feel like that really happened for you?
That's right. Yeah, and just, there's a peace that comes, and that's really what Easter and the cross is about, is that peace that comes of not trying to do it on my own, and not trying to get to heaven on my own, but being able to really trust that God's going to take me through Jesus.
Well, there was one misstep, if you don't mind sharing it with people. You got your marketing degree, that was good, but it was at Texas A&M. You see,
you're a producer, yeah.
Yeah, I know, everybody in my office, A&M, but I went to UT, hook 'em horns. All right.
Y'all got us this year.
God's a Longhorn. That's why we have burnt orange, because the sunset's burnt orange. Okay, whatever, that whole thing. Okay. Master's degree in Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. So you knew you wanted to go into the pastorship.
Yeah, when I was in college, I started a thing called Breakaway, and it took off from 12 kids to about 4,000 kids.
Oh, wow.
So
you see the need there,
yeah,
right?
I saw the need, and I saw some giftedness that I enjoyed doing this. And when that really took off, I continued with my business degree, and that was great. Got my marketing degree, and actually I was awarded Outstanding Business Student, the only pastor to ever receive that from Texas A&M. So it was great. So I really dug into the business part, but then God had a plan planned for me to be a pastor. And I just started sensing that this is what God wanted me to do. I wanted to do it, and there was fruit when I did it. There was a connection that happened, and that just has been the joy of my life now to be able to do that.
I want to back up to something you said. It started with basically a dozen students and went to 4,000. Every time we have like a producer on the show who says, yeah, we took a chance on a program or a series that was religious based, and they had trouble getting funding because it was always told that, well, people really aren't interested in that, and all of a sudden it becomes, the chosen.
Totally, sure. It skyrockets. I think everybody's a little afraid at first because you don't want to offend anybody, and no one wants to be anything but welcoming and winsome. But then you take that step out, and you see, one, that the Lord's going to bless that, and that two, that people need things. We have a soul. There's in us something deeper than just what we can see and hear, but to let that be the part that comes out, and people really resonate with that.
It's interesting you say you don't want to offend anybody, but what I always found as a child who grew up in different countries in their early years, and I've traveled around the world. I'm familiar with several of the world's religions, and yes, there are key differences, but the foundation of a lot of those religions are all the same. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and that's treat people with kindness.
Yeah. There's a lot of...
Why are we fighting right now?
Sure. There's a lot of just adjectives that can go across any religion to be able to do that. And then, obviously there's different beliefs theologically on who Christ is and who God is and things like that. But I think we can, be nice to each other.
Let's just start there, right? All right. There are three ways that you share your faith. One is prayer.
Prayer, care, share. That's what I like to say. And, you want to talk to God about men before you talk to men about God. And so I really want to be praying for somebody and asking them even, how can I pray for you? Everybody's got a need. Everybody's got somebody sick in their family. Everybody's got a challenge. So praying for them and then caring for them, showing that I love them, showing that there's a care there. After Easter, we have a lot of Easter lilies. I'll take some home and I'll give some to neighbors around the neighborhood just to say, hey, happy Easter to you too, whether they believe in Christ or not.
Yeah, because you have, this is Houston, right? We have so many different,
so diverse.
You have in your neighborhood, you have people from different backgrounds.
That's right. That's right.
And I always, one of your things is to pray for opportunity to touch somebody's life. And I finally came across that myself at one point. I said, I get it. If you let God use you, you don't have to figure out how. It can be the smallest thing. You can let someone in traffic and change their entire day, right? But you don't know how you're going to impact somebody with the smallest of tasks. Easter, this Sunday, and we, as I mentioned in the beginning, we get caught up in all the pageantry of it and the secular part of it. By the way, if you're wondering why people do Easter baskets, they think it's because in the Catholic Church, after Lent, people will bring their basket full of food and have it blessed, right? But somehow it turned into Cadbury chocolate eggs and Reese's and jelly beans and all that type of stuff, which is fun. But what you get out of it, and some of it's symbolic, a lot of it can be incorporated into our own lives.
I think if you can take those things and let it point to something deeper. So new life, excitement, beautiful colors, springtime, all of that, but to take that and to point to something, because, in a capitalistic society, we're going to find a way to make money on something. So it's going to be selling candy, selling this, selling that, but use those things as symbols to point to the fact of really the reason of Easter is resurrection. That's the new life. That's the new beginning. That's the bright colors. That's the sunshine. That's the morning sunrise.
And how many people have longed for that in their life? Whether it's somebody who's in recovery. It's like all that stuff that happened before is a part of your life, does not define the rest of your life, right? Resurrection is another opportunity, another chance. We also know that Passover is also noted this time of year, which commemorates the Israelites' exodus from Egypt. And so that ends on Sunday as well. All right, you have your book, Difference Makers: How to Live a Life of Impact and Purpose.
Yes. That's one of the things in my heart, is just being a difference maker. You want to make a difference everywhere you go, and we have that opportunity. And so I was able to write that book, and even yesterday, the 8th graders at First Baptist Academy go through that book, and so I got to meet with them and do a Q&A with them, and it's just a book to be able to say, make a difference with your life. You've given this one life, and we all can make a difference. Somebody may be on TV like you are every day, but somebody just behind the scenes, just being sweet and kind, raising their kids, being a great neighbor, being a great employee or employer, and making a difference in somebody else's life.
And you never know when you're giving help when you might need that help.
That's
you
right.
all did that after major disasters, Hurricane Harvey, dereches, whatever. In fact, you said if you can get to my house, you have a place to stay.
That's right. We in Harvey and many other things we've had in Houston and around the world, our church wants to step forward and help and make a difference in people's lives. And Harvey, we did a huge amount of stuff there. But that wasn't the last storm we've had in Houston. We're going to have more. So we're ready to go at any point.
All right. Basically, you live by the principle of WWJD. What would Jesus do?
That's right.
To help and make things, happen. All right. Church has been around since
1841.
Wow.
Needless
to say, you're not the first pastor.
I am not the first pastor. We predate Texas being a part of the United States by 4 years.
Wow.
So it was its own nation.
And
foreign missionaries came from Tennessee to start our church. And so it's amazing things. So we've got that rich history, but we're also on the cutting edge of today and relevant to what's going on today.
Well, Pastor, thank you so much for joining us
What
today.
a joy.
If you're looking for a place to worship and celebrate Easter, Houston's First Baptist Church has plenty of opportunities, so you don't have to sit in the overflow room like my family always did because we were never there on time. Okay, there are 16 Easter services and 4 campuses to choose from. In fact, you say after 16 services.
I say Jesus is alive, but I'm dead.
All right. You can also watch online.